Shut up and sit down.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Fight for Liberty show. Today we have another great guest. He is one of the powerhouses of the New Hampshire Libertarian Party, ran for Senate this year against Janine Shaheen. That's a hard word to say. Please welcome my friend, Justin O'Donnell. How's it going, Justin?
Not bad, David. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. So I like to start off everybody's first appearance on the show with kind of just your political testimony, like what happened and who existed in your life that kind of got you to believe what you believe now, and kind of how you came to the LP.
Are you familiar with Jim Bouchard of Maine?
Yes.
Libertarian. So he had a book called Crazy Angry Libertarian. Not saying that's what brought me over, but he has a great philosophy that he kind of outlines in the book where he thinks that nobody ever becomes a libertarian. You just have a kind of a culmination of life experiences that lead you to the realization that you always were one. And I think myself, along with many people, when you really think about it, that's the path that we come to the Libertarian Party. For me, it was mostly my military service. It was mostly my time in the military and the things that we did when I was in the military, including the occupation of Boston. The time I was NCOIC in charge of a military checkpoint in an American city.
Yeah, that's a little bit frightening.
Yeah. But I mean, the full story there was I was on the security detail for the Boston Marathon in 2013. And after the bombs had gone off the finish line, 3 days later, we finally left Boston after locking down the city in true military lockdown fashion. People weren't allowed to leave their homes. We were going door to door searching. No warrants, nothing like that. It was, hey, we think 2 to 3 bad guys on the loose, so we're going to lock down an entire city. Nobody's allowed to go anywhere. And then a few months later, I was running security for the 4th of July in Boston as well. And the 4th of July was a little bit different. We went into it after having just had a terrorist attack in Boston. So we put everything we could possibly put, mobile camera units. We had ATF, DEA, FBI, Boston Police, State Police, SWAT teams, National Guard, Navy, EOD, Coast Guard, everything, like to the nines, to do security for the Boston Commons and Esplanade for the 4th of July. And at one point, I had a fresh second lieutenant. This kid had graduated college a few weeks earlier, had just gotten his commission, and and he was assigned to be the officer in charge of the security detail. And he, one of the best officers I've ever had, because he came up to me, he's like, "All right, O'Donnell, you're in charge. I'm here to learn." I'm like, "Great, you're not an idiot." But we were walking between 2 checkpoints around lunchtime. I was delivering food to guys at different checkpoints. And at one point, somebody had just sat down in front of us in a lawn chair in the middle of the sidewalk and started reading a book. And the lieutenant starts freaking out. He's like, "You can't obstruct this. We're going to have you arrested. You need to move." And the guy just sits there and keeps reading, ignoring him, right under a mobile camera unit in front of a checkpoint, just obstructing traffic. And like, I'm watching this, and then I just die laughing. I just burst into tears laughing. And my lieutenant looks at me. He's like, "What's so funny?" I'm like, "He's reading 1984." And he's like, "I don't get it." That as I'm explaining the plot of 1984 to this college graduate, I'm starting to realize, shit, we're Big Brother. We're the bad guy. And And that was kind of the moment it all started to click and hit for me. And like I had been following libertarians on Twitter and YouTube, Julie Borowski, Rand Paul, all through college up before that. But I think that was really the moment where it clicked. I was like, ah, shit, I'm the bad guy.
Yeah, I think a similar realization is what stopped me from actually joining. I had all the paperwork. My dad's a Marine. Both of my one of my grandpas is Air Force, the other one's Army. Like my entire family is military. So I was fully planning on enlisting when I graduated high school, like my dad did, my whole life. And then probably around 15, 16, I watched Taps, actually was the beginning of the end of that fantasy. And not because of the actual plot line of the movie, but just the realistic part in the beginning of like what military school is like. And my dad was explaining to me how much worse boot camp is than that. And I was like, that doesn't sound like a fun thing to do. Maybe I don't want to do that. I've always been a little bit rebellious and class clown kind of person that doesn't do well with authority. So I was like, maybe the military is not the best fit.
No, honestly, I think one of the biggest atrocities the United States government engages in on a daily basis is sending military recruiters into high schools.
Mm-hmm.
They're recruiting kids who've been brainwashed for years to think what's going on is going on without at an age where they're not legally able to sign a contract for anything else, and asking them to sign their life away to this monolithic behemoth of violence and force that does not engage in what it's purported to engage in, but goes all over the world and essentially engaging in terrorism. And they recruit these kids at an age where they don't know any better. And they utilize public education to create a pomp and circumstance around patriotism to brainwash the kids into it.
Mm-hmm. I think you can really tell the true motives behind the government when you realize that at 16 you can sign up for the Marine Corps, but not the Peace Corps. It's basically the same idea, just one is killing people, the other one's not. And the government severely helps push one of those two groups of people.
Right. And to the point where they spend hundreds of millions of dollars a year advertising the military on public sports events and TV commercials. If the military got back to the root and its core purpose of what's outlined in the Constitution as a defensive mechanism to help protect and defend the United States against encroachments from foreign enemies, then we would need a military a fraction of the size that we have right now. We wouldn't need the recruiting. We wouldn't need to be spending billions of dollars on advertising every year.
Right.
And probably faith in the institution would rise to the point where you'd see an increase in people trying to join voluntarily, and could raise your standards and tell people, nah, you're not good enough.
Right. Wouldn't that be a great system where we were actually able to pick and choose who we're teaching how to use these deadly weapons and making sure that they're people with an IQ over 7?
Well, I mean, don't get me wrong. I think everybody should be able to learn how to use the deadly weapons.
I mean, that is true.
I'm a huge fan of recreational nukes. I think everyone should have their own deterrent from government aggression. So
I have a banner that's permanently on this website for recreational rocket launchers. It's my favorite hashtag on Twitter because everyone just goes nuts. They're like, rocket launchers are bad. It's like, no, they're not.
Right. It always annoyed me that I could buy a grenade launcher at a gun show, but not a rocket launcher.
Right. It's so there. Some of these restrictions are so pointless.
Yeah.
My friend Reed Coverdale, he hosts the Naturalist Capitalist, basically became famous off of a video of him comparing an AR-15 and an M1 Garand, And he kind of goes along this sarcastic talking points. It's so glad we got rid of all those scary assault rifles with the bump stocks and the foregrips and the extended mags and all this stuff. Those are super dangerous. All we need are these nice hunting safe rifles made of wood. Can't do anything bad. And then he loads a clip and bump fires it without a bump stock and just. If you know anything about these guns, M1 Grand Bullet is about yay big, and AR Bullet's about yay big.
Right.
It's like completely much more dangerous. Will blow actual holes in a human instead of just stopping.
So, believe it or not, so the NATO 5.56 cartridge was actually designed to be less lethal than the 308 and 7.62. And NATO adopted the 5.56 as a battle cartridge for the M16 AR platform because it was less deadly. Because military doctrine at the time assumed that if you shot somebody with something less deadly, then it would take them out of the fight, the two people to carry them back from the front lines out of the fight, the medic to treat them out of the fight, and cost their home country tens of thousands of dollars and tens of thousands of hours to treat them and rehabilitate them. And it was more along the lines of economic warfare against the Soviet Union. We figured that would be a better strategy because if the Soviets killed an American soldier, he's out of the fight. If the Americans wound a Soviet soldier, 5 people are out of the fight, and it costs them $100,000 to treat him.
That's brilliant. Actually, I did not know that. That is a genius tactic.
Yeah, and it's funny. It's actually considered cruel and unusual to hunt deer with an AR-15 because it won't kill them with one shot.
Mm-hmm.
They'll run off, suffer, and bleed out, and you won't be able to find the body.
Right, and the meat's going to taste significantly worse because they're going to tense up completely.
Right.
Just you need a clean headshot. Just
right, but let's be honest. Most people, and most Marines can't pull that off.
That is true. I have the blessing of being raised by a Marine sniper, so I've been able to hit targets at 50 yards since I was like 8 or 9.
It's a little bit different when they're moving through dense underbrush, but
that is true. I have actually never been big game hunting at all in my life. I've meant to more than once. I almost did when I was in New Hampshire over last fall, but I've never had the license or the guns on me at the time to go do some good hunting.
I used to hunt all the time before I moved to New Hampshire. Since I moved to New Hampshire, I haven't found the time.
Well, there's so many other fun things to do in New Hampshire.
Like go and yell at the governor.
Or yell at the governor. Which actually brings me to my next question. So you ran for Senate this year against Janine Shaheen, which I'm going to say right this time. Jean Shaheen. Any plans for a challenge for Hassan or Sununu in 22?
Not at the moment. In fact, my plan for 2022 is to try and convince Nicholas Sarwark to run against Hassan.
Okay. I dig that.
He doesn't know yet.
I'm trying to get him on the show. So maybe if I succeed in that mission, I'll help him try to push that. I like the fact that he ran this year. I really enjoy the fact that we have a few libertarians with actual credentials to run for judicial branch offices, because those are kind of few and far between. So the fact that he's actually deserving of that position that he ran for was kind of a nice change of pace for the Libertarian Party.
It was kind of annoying when the Liberty Republicans tried to have him thrown off the ballot, though.
What's a Liberty Republican?
It's a Republican who claims to be libertarian.
Yeah, I could talk all day about how terrible that group is. I worked for Young Americans for Liberty this year, and a couple other Republican groups like that.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I've knocked doors for some actual neocons now, including Lindsey Graham and Donald Trump.
Yeah, we had a group of great kids up in New Hampshire who were working for Young Americans for Liberty this year during the campaign. And they took a break during their door knocking one day when I had Joe Jorgensen in Manchester to come see Joe Jorgensen at our event. And two of them got fired from Young Americans for Liberty for it.
Ooh. I did not hear that story.
Yeah, the state director for YAL actually locked them out of the hotel that night and kicked them out and left them homeless in the middle of New Hampshire.
Jesus. Okay. New reasons to hate YAL. And I've been trying to go a little bit easier on them on the show lately, because I do still have friends in the organization, and I have one of their state chairs coming on the show later in the week. But they're just awful sometimes. And
unfortunately,
call out awful people when they're.
I like to break it down. YAL is a great organization with terrible leadership.
Yeah.
They could do a lot of good, and they choose not to.
Mm-hmm. So I think they started with the complete best of intentions, but like everything in politics, it came down to money. Their donors aren't going to donate to them if they lose elections, so they're not going to work with not viable candidates. That step of the process I completely agree with. And then they just started to find more neocons that were viable than Liberty Republicans, and started being, as long as you're okay on guns and taxes, you're a Liberty Republican. Doesn't matter if you want to overturn Roe v. Wade and ban abortions and lock people up for having them. It doesn't matter if you want to not only keep the war on drugs but expand it. I worked for a state rep race in Michigan, which is legal. It's a legal state, and this kid wanted to undo that and make it back to being a prohibition state and re-criminalize marijuana. And this was a YAL endorsed candidate.
We're having a race in the New Hampshire House in the next couple of weeks for the Speaker of the House position because the elected Speaker just actually died of COVID a week ago. So they're replacing him. The Republican candidate, Jason Osborne, who is a Free Stater, a Liberty Republican, a YAL endorsed candidate, even though last cycle he spent a significant amount of his time campaigning against the repeal of the death penalty.
Yeah. See, that's one of those issues that I'll admit I am still a little bit on the fence about.
Well, think about it this way. I'm not necessarily anti-death penalty. I am anti the administration of the death penalty by the state justice system, which has been proven to be inefficient and inaccurate.
Right. Because I'm all for wood chippers for politicians. Like,
guillotines serve a vital purpose in the free market.
Right. I definitely think there is an argument to be made against like life imprisonment as a alternative. That argument is invalid at the moment because at the moment keeping somebody alive in prison for 40 years is cheaper than killing them. For whatever freaking reason, the American justice system just doesn't do things well or correctly. A lethal injection is like $500,000, so we could actually keep them alive in prison for much.
Lethal injection is about to get a lot more expensive too.
Right.
So believe it or not, the drug companies that make the lethal injection drugs a couple of years ago decided we're not doing this anymore. We're not making lethal injection drugs. The state of Kentucky, I believe it was, tried to compel them to make more lethal injection drugs, and they went to court over it. And the court said, no, they have a right to stop making the drugs. They don't have to do it. You can't compel them to do it. And all the lethal injection drugs that exist have an expiration date on them. So that's why you're seeing a lot of executions in states like Texas, Georgia, and federally being rushed right now, is because their stockpile of lethal injection drugs are expiring, and there is no availability to resupply until they can convince another drug company to make them.
Interesting. That would explain why Trump is using his last month of office to murder a bunch of people.
Yeah, but I find it fascinating because there's still one person on death row in New Hampshire, And New Hampshire has no lethal injection drugs. They have no ability to execute that person by lethal injection. So even though we repealed the death penalty, they did not repeal it retroactively. So this person will still be executed, and he's exhausted all of his appeals, and his execution comes up in a couple of years, per the state constitution. And the state constitution says that the only way to execute somebody other than lethal injection is with a public hanging, Capitol Square. And I'm really interested to see what's going to happen when the governor puts out bid requests to build a gallows on the State House Common.
That's going to be an interesting day. I might have to drive back out to New Hampshire to see that one.
Right. It's like I keep telling people, like, they're not going to execute it. Like, the governor's gonna commute that sentence because there's no way the governor wants to oversee a public hanging. It'll be the first public hanging in the Western Hemisphere since the Civil War.
That would be a fun little, where the live free or die state. So,
right. I mean,
part is important.
I mean, the guy's on death row for killing a cop. Personally, I think that's a violation of the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause, because a capital crime, killing an agent of the state, gives the agent of the state more preferential treatment before the law than your average person.
Right. Which is just a fact of life at this point.
Right. It's the annoying part. In New Hampshire, somebody could shoot up a school. They can go in and kill 30 kids and they would get life in prison. Kill the cop, they got the death penalty.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I'm sure. No. Not really. No.
Or a state rep. Believe it or not, they list state representatives as agents of the state in that law as well.
That's a lot of people that could get you the death penalty. You might.
We only got 400 of them.
In New Hampshire, you go into a Walmart and start shooting, you're likely to hit a state rep accidentally.
It's not out of the realm of possibility. It's like duck hunting with a scatter gun.
Right. I think that was one of my favorite things about being in New Hampshire is just existing in the state of New Hampshire for about 3 months. I think I met about a half a dozen state reps, not at like Tulsi events or something like that, just like out knocking doors or eating at a diner or something like that. I had a state rep buy me dinner once because I was eating at a diner with a Tulsi shirt on. She was a big Bernie girl, and she paid for my dinner, invited me over to her table with her boyfriend, and had a nice little meal.
Yeah, so Nick Sarwark lives 3 doors down from me. 3 doors the other way is one of my 2 state reps. I can go over to the Libertarian Club on the other side of town, and there'll be 5 or 6 state reps that hang out there from the Republican side. I go down to, there's a social dinner they have in Nashua every Sunday. 7 or 8 state reps will be there every week. Or I go to Castro's Cigar Bar, Castro's back room. It's where the magic happens. And myself and AJ Olding have actually successfully gotten legislation changed or killed by smoking cigars in a backroom dingy bar with state reps.
That sounds like the most like 50s thing I've ever heard.
Yeah. Well, there is a cigar bar. There's a location in Nashua and a location in Manchester, and at both locations, state reps just hang out. And they're in there. So we go in there. It's a dingy back room. The owner is a fairly libertarian guy, not active or anything, but he has called for libertarians to help oppose the state when the state was bothering him before. But like, we've gone in and there'll be 5 or 6 state reps just sitting there watching a football game. It's like, oh, Mr. O'Brien, can I have a conversation with you about HB 411? And we can just have the conversation about the bill going to the Transportation Committee and why it needs to die. And we have successfully changed the minds on state reps over cigars in a back room, actually having conversations with them like normal people. Once you realize the fact that this is New Hampshire, we have 400 state reps. They're unpaid. They're just normal people. Mm-hmm. Like, it's a volunteer job.
Right. It's the most representative democracy in the world.
Yeah, it is the second largest English-speaking parliamentary body in the world, behind only the United States Congress, but we have less than 2 million people in the state.
Right. Yeah. So by ratio, I think it's the most representative.
Easily. Your average state rep represents a little over 2,000 people.
That's such a tiny group of people. You can actually know what all 2,000 of those people think and then vote.
Right. Right. It's not out of realm for reps in single member districts. Like, we have some single member districts where they represent 1,900 people who vote on the state rep. Then we have some multi-member districts where like 60,000 people vote on 17 reps. But in the single member districts, it's not out of the realm for a state rep to know by name every single one of their constituents.
That should be the goal of every state rep in America, I think.
Well, I mean, tell that to somebody in Brooklyn.
Right. I ran for New York City Council, and my constituency would have been about 120,000, I think, something like that, of actual people, like 40,000 voters in the district. There's no way I'm learning all of their names.
Yeah,
that's just city council. The state rep districts are bigger.
Well, I joked with Jeff Hewitt once after he got elected. I'm like, well, Jeff, I'm running for U.S. Senate. Even if I win, your jurisdiction would still be bigger than mine. Like, there are more people in Riverside County than there are in New Hampshire.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
So we're trying to get Nick to run for Senate.
Or Valerie.
Or Valerie. That would be great. Anybody on the short list for challenging Sununu in your mind?
Sununu's running for Senate. We all know how it's going to happen. It's what his dad did. It's what his brother did. It's what Hassan did. It's what Shaheen did. 3 terms as governor, then run for Senate.
Right. Right. He's
not term limited. There's no term limit. It's just what you do.
3 terms.
Yeah. Well, it's usually 2. Shaheen and Hassan each did 2 terms and then ran for Senate. My theory is that Sununu chose to run for governor again instead of Senate this year because of how popular Shaheen was. He knew he couldn't beat her.
Mm-hmm.
But Hassan,
he can beat Hassan?
Oh, he'll beat Hassan. He won re-election by 70 points in a blue wave.
That's true. That is a good point. He is a pretty popular governor for being such dog shit.
I mean, I have to hand it to him. With the exception of the death penalty, marijuana legalization, and this COVID stuff, he might be the best governor in the country. Not a high bar. There's not a high bar there, but he's tried and true. Like, he's the Democrats gave him one of the best campaign ads ever, I think, and he didn't run with it. They were so pissed at everything that he'd vetoed this past 2 years that they set up a graveyard on the Commons in front of the State House, and each gravestone just read the name of a bill that he vetoed.
That's awesome.
That's
a campaign ad.
I thought so
too. That's a positive ad. Sometimes the Democrats don't really understand what the Republicans do that's wrong.
Exist.
Right. They think that's the answer.
Yeah.
That just the existence of Republicans is terrible. And I think sorry.
Well, even libertarians get it wrong all the time with what's wrong with Democrats and Republicans, and there's a lot of people in the liberty movement who hate the left more than they love freedom.
That is a fact. I have been battling idiots on Twitter for like months now. I'm a right libertarian. I pretty close to the middle line, but I'm a capitalist. I don't believe in big government. I don't believe in welfare. But if you're going to pitch me an idea like Andrew Yang's original plan for UBI, which included scrapping basically the rest of welfare and using all of the overhead budget that we pay, like people within those departments, to also pay for UBI. I'm gonna be okay with that. Especially if you're also campaigning on a platform of like decriminalize all drugs, pardon Assange and Snowden, and all of these other great things.
It's a starting point, but I mean, there's a way you could justify every bad proposal coming out of the left right about now, if if you have an if and an and on it.
Mhm.
I could come up with a great student loan forgiveness plan. And I did. I pitched one in the basement to some friends the other night. I'm like, all right, let's forgive all outstanding student loans. Let's also give a rolling tax credit for the amount repaid in student loans for anybody who's made a payment over the past 15 years to allow them to roll forward over the next 5 years against their income taxes. And let's cease the federal student loan program outright.
Yeah. I'm okay with all of those things. Because
Like
I get a
that
tax
would be
break and
that would be a better economic stimulus than either of the stimulus bills we've gotten this year.
Right. Just cancel 2020's income tax would be a better stimulus package than we've seen this year.
Let's not get ahead of ourselves. They wouldn't know what to do.
Right. They wouldn't know where to get the $900 billion they just sent all over the world.
Right. And I would be really pissed as someone who didn't pay income tax.
That's true. Yeah, I'm not going to pay taxes this year. Not even a little bit. I didn't make a single freaking dollar that got taxed this year.
No, I have not paid a dime in taxes, and it hasn't even been by accident, like intentional. Unfortunately, the way the unemployment system works and the way my income is structured combined for a very unique scenario. I used to work at an insurance brokerage in Massachusetts.
Mm-hmm.
I worked on commission. I made 80% of my yearly income between October 15th and December 7th every year during open enrollment.
Makes sense.
So I'd be working the rest of the year at like $5 to $6 an hour just doing setup for my $250 an hour for 6 weeks, working 60 hours a week. And Massachusetts unemployment is structured as such as your weekly benefit is not based on your yearly earning. It's based on your highest 2 quarters in the past 6 quarters, which for me included 2 Q4s when I lost work in February of this year. And so the Massachusetts unemployment calculation ended up paying me about 4 times what I would have been making every week.
Nice.
And between that and my company actually taking off because people didn't want to shop and everything was online and buying clothes online became a thing, I've seen bigger corporate profits on the company I own, and I'm making more money by not working than working because of the scheme of the way unemployment is structured. And eventually I'm sitting here wondering, I'm like, I don't know if the state wants anyone to go back to work. Like, why are they offering this kind of a deal if they ever want anyone to go back to work?
Right. I definitely think that, especially this year, they've been trying to keep people out of work, and maybe that's a COVID related good thing, that they're just trying to keep people home and in their houses. And if that were the case, we would have gotten better stimulus packages, I think. But if you're reliant completely on government income, then you're significantly less likely to say things like all taxation is theft, or
Right. I mean,
welfare is theft, because it's what's keeping you alive. And you and I are both pretty grounded in what we believe enough to where getting an unemployment or a stimulus check isn't going to completely make us rethink our philosophy. But for the people that are significantly less engaged than you and me, they're just going to be like, okay, yeah, the government's fixing my problems. Harry Brown quote of government's breaking your legs and then giving you a crutch.
Saying,
You know,
isn't it great you can walk because of me?
right.
I mean, to be perfectly frank and honest, I've just been buying a lot of Bitcoin with all this government money all year, and that turned out to be a great idea too.
Oh yeah, I am so much regretting. I almost spent a decent chunk of that $1,200 check on Bitcoin, and I didn't, and it was still at like 6 or 7 grand back in March. Now it's at 23 grand. So that $1,200 could be almost 3 grand by now. And I made that mistake. I did buy some Bitcoin a couple months back just before it did that last big jump. So I got a little bit of the benefit from that.
My mother always asks me, she's like, why are you still buying Bitcoin? It's going to crash. I'm like, Mom, I started buying Bitcoin at $3. I'm up.
Right. My dad says the same thing, and my dad, I give him a lot of credit for why I believe what I do politically. He definitely raised me to stockpile ammo and not trust the government.
22 long rifle will be the currency of the apocalypse.
Yes. And my dad is the kind of person that's always been, he taught me to respect the government and the police and all of those agencies, but to interact with them as little as humanly possible. But I talked to him about Bitcoin, and yeah, he's still where I was 2 years ago of, this is just a stupid internet thing. Like, if John McAfee is pushing for this, it must be stupid. Like,
John McAfee is a terrible representative. But I mean, the point, it is kind of a stupid internet thing. It's a stupid internet thing and a stupid New Hampshire thing. I'll move right up and say it. It's like the only two places in the world right now where you can kind of live off crypto without like converting it back to dollars is New Hampshire and Antigua. And Antigua only because Roger Ver is down in Antigua going door to door and business to business, setting up every business on the island to take Bitcoin Cash. Mm-hmm. But New Hampshire, I pay my rent in Bitcoin. I can buy my groceries in there's 4 restaurants in town that take Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash. I can shop on Amazon Smile and use Bitcoin on Amazon through Purse.io. I can in a pinch run down to the ATM, put Bitcoin in the ATM, and it hands me dollars. Like, this is a place where I can live off of crypto, and I'm not the only one doing it. And I know a lot of people around here who living off the $30 we spent at PorkFest in 2012 for the past few years, managing to get by on that, and it's allowed us to basically opt out of the system and not pay taxes because we don't have income. We're living off a wise investment that doesn't exist on any market the government has the ability to track.
Right, which is the most brilliant part of it. And I think what crypto really needed was a few proofs of concept, a place like Antigua or New Hampshire where they can assimilate enough to prove that it actually works. And I think they're succeeding in that mission. Because like you said, most places in the country, you have to convert your Bitcoin back to dollars before you can really do anything with it.
And there's a tax proposition in there.
Right. There's taxes and there's like exchange fees from Bitcoin. So, if you're just buying and selling Bitcoin back and forth all day, you're probably going to be losing money on the exchange rates and stuff like that. If you're trying to like live off of Bitcoin in Colorado, which I was doing last month, and, it just doesn't quite work out well. But when you have places like Murphy's Tap Room that has a Bitcoin ATM in their atrium, like that makes life a lot easier.
Yeah, and I'm working on getting the comic shop to accept Bitcoin now, so I can evoke my Magic the Gathering habit with Bitcoin instead of dollars.
There you go.
But the comic shop might be the last holdout. Magic?
Yeah, I have met.
Are you not
Magic?
Are you not familiar with the rich history between Wizards of the Coast and the Libertarian Party?
I am not.
Okay. The two are very intertwined. Let me find it real quick. So the inventor of Dungeons and Dragons, Dave Arneson, was a lifetime member of the Libertarian Party. And he worked at Wizards of the Coast in their R&D and game development. And his FBI file read, known associate of the Libertarian Party. And there's a rich history of Richard Garfield, who was the creator of Magic the Gathering, was a member of the Libertarian Party. Zach Dolan, you know Zach, right?
Yes.
Was the first ever Magic the Gathering world champion. He won the 1994 World Championship for Magic the Gathering. The deck he played that game with is worth over like $400,000 now in collector's value. but
that doesn't surprise me, especially from the 90s, because that was probably like Mox Opals and Standard, stuff like that.
Yeah, he ran a Black Lotus, all 5 Moxes, and Time Twister. It's a degenerately bad deck, but it won back then. It wouldn't win today, regardless of the fact of how expensive they are.
Or how many of those cards are banned or limited.
Yeah, but there's a rich history between Wizards of the Coast and the Libertarian Party as being very intertwined in their development, including and it culminated in the late 90s. There was public outcry against Wizards of the Coast when Magic started to get first started to get popular, like mainstream wise. People were freaking out about the satanic images and demonic imagery, as the Wizards of the Coast was brainwashing kids and destroying Christian values. And it was the libertarians who came to the defense of Wizards of the Coast's First Amendment rights to print the art on their game cards.
Nice. This might be the coolest story I've heard in quite some time, because I'm a big fan of Magic. I've been playing it. I got into it late for where most people get into it, because I was like 19 when I started playing Magic, because my brother-in-law got me into it. He got my sister into it, and then me. Is that a real one?
Yep. It's from my cube. I'm bringing the cube to the convention in Reno.
Ooh. I will very much enjoy taking part in that. I'm just over here. I haven't been playing for a couple of months now, because I've just been bouncing around the world or the country. But I'm a mono red kind of guy. Just burn everyone in the face and have fun.
I play Commander, and I have 9 different Commander decks.
Okay.
So
you're a real libertarian.
Yeah. No, it's a rich. In fact, Magic the Gathering is how I got into Bitcoin.
Okay, that's a story I need too.
So I was competitively playing Magic the Gathering online at one point when they first developed the online platform, and there became a website. A website came out called Magic the Gathering Online Exchange, and Mount Gox, mtg.gox, and where you could buy and sell Magic the Gathering Online credit and trade Magic the Gathering Online cards, and then one day somebody offered me Bitcoin for a card. I'm like, the fuck is this? And I accepted it. I'm like, sure, whatever. You sent me Bitcoin for a card. I forgot what the hell it was. I had no clue how to spend it or use it. But 6 months later, Magic the Gathering Online Exchange stopped all operations with Magic cards and became the first Bitcoin exchange at Mount Gox.
Huh.
And I told that to like Dan Fishman and some people at a convention. I'm like, yeah, no, I remember being on Mount Gox when Mount Gox was Magic cards, not Bitcoin. And somebody's like, oh my God, I knew the Magic the Gathering nerds and I knew the Bitcoin nerds. I never knew they were the same nerds.
It's true. There's so much crossover there. And what I found really weird is, you mentioned the outcry against the imagery and how it's like destroying Christian values and stuff like that. I heard that a lot when I first got into it. But I mentioned that my brother-in-law is who got me into it. He's a pastor. Like the entire friend group that I started playing with, they like it was a very strange, like split down the middle, half and a half group. There was the stoners and the church kids that all were best friends because of Magic the Gathering. And at the time, I was like a half Christian and wasn't smoking yet. So both groups kind of won me over to their thing. I started going back to church. I made a lot of really good friends in the faith and like people that I was able to talk out like the crazy things going on in my head as like an 18, 19-year-old trying to figure out my place in the world. And then the other half of them turned me into the stoner that I am today. So,
well, it really comes down to like I've been playing Magic since 1996. Weird enough as it is, but
I was born in 96.
If it were not for Bitcoin, I wouldn't have bought all these this year.
Ooh. That's a beautiful little handful.
Yeah. So, granted, like all of these together was like a whole Bitcoin.
A singular Bitcoin at this point.
Right.
Yeah, I love the what are they called? Whole coiners? Is that what people that own more than one Bitcoin? I love that dichotomy. Like, oh, you're not really into Bitcoin. You only own like 0.0 something.
I have spent a Bitcoin on lunch. I remember spending a Bitcoin on lunch for me and a friend when that Bitcoin was $26.
Now it's gone up 1,000 times.
Yeah. So it's if I could have back all of the Bitcoin I spent on bacon at Pork Fest in 2013, I'd be a billionaire.
I mean, but if there's a good thing to spend billions of dollars on, it is bacon. Like,
yeah, wouldn't you rather have billions of dollars worth of bacon though?
This is true. This is very true. Ooh, billions of dollars of bacon. That sounds like a wet dream.
No, but I try and point out to people like there's always that regret. Oh, what if I had held instead of spending? And I justify it by telling people like if it weren't for us in 2013 spending crypto willy-nilly on everything, it wouldn't be what it is today.
Yeah. Dollars need to be spent. That's the only way an economy works, and Bitcoin's no different.
So, but like had I not spent 7 Bitcoin in 3 days on food, and others doing the same, then those vendors I gave the Bitcoin to would not have had Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
And they wouldn't have been invested in Bitcoin going up, and it wouldn't have spread to more people and whatnot. But no, I still have one paper wallet left from 2012, where we were at Pork Fest and they brought up the first ever Bitcoin ATM up there, and it was like, yeah, put $10 in it and it gives you a Bitcoin. And it would print out a little piece of paper with a QR code and a private key on it, and it's like, yeah, that's a Bitcoin.
Interesting. Yeah, see, I've still yet to see like the physical versions of Bitcoin, because there is an actual like coin as well, right?
Oh, you want me to go grab one?
Sure.
One sec. I had to grab my box full of coins.
Nice. That's worth more than the Black Lotus.
Possibly. Or this was a favorite one.
Ooh.
1 Bitcoin with the QR code engraved on the back.
Okay, that's dope. I have always loved the concept of QR codes, and they became a fad that died off kind of quickly, and I think they're going to come back. But I don't understand why they died off so quickly. I think it's like the most useful thing we ever did with technology.
I mean, it was up there as far as image recognition of a URL in a pictographic form, but it was really just the first step in bitmap encryption. And I think they died off in usability because so many people started to get annoyed when, ooh, QR code, scan it. Damn it, it's not Bitcoin.
Fair.
Like, I see a QR code randomly. I'm like, I'm going to sweep this wallet. And I'm like, what do you mean this isn't a crypto wallet?
Yeah, that is where the QR codes kind of started out, right? Was in crypto, and then they moved to the rest of.
I think they started out in MySpace. Because it really is just a cryptographic image. You can store up to 200, as a base QR code with just like 18 points can store 256 bits of entropy worth of data in a picture form, and it's really, really easy to decrypt just running it through the decryption. And so you can store passwords in the QR code. You can the more complex the QR code, the more you can store in it, but it's easy enough to save as an image file on any device or share around. There's bitmap encryption where you can encode very large amounts of data into an image, which is no different than what a QR code is. It's just more complicated, more pixels, more defined. There was an image going around a couple years ago when they were censoring all of the distributed arms files on the internet. Everywhere was censoring them because the 3D gun files, the 3D printed gun files, like Twitter was taking down the links, Facebook was taking down the links. It was nuts. A friend of mine actually put together the complete schematics for the 3D printing of the Liberator handgun and encrypted them into a bitmap image file, which he encoded into a just like a portrait he found on Google. And he just put that up with label, "This is a gun," under a portrait of a woman. And if you ran that image through a bitmap decryptor, you got the schematics to build a handgun.
That is brilliant. That's some like 1984 spy level shit.
I mean, it's an interesting way to get around the whole government search and whatnot. It's an old trick, but when people used to want to get around the NSA spying after Snowden released everything, sending before the at ease of getting encrypted email with Proton Mail and stuff like that. And what we used to do is we would share a Gmail account. We would share the login and password with each other, and we would encode the messages into bitmap files, attach them to an email, and save it as a draft. It would never be sent, and the NSA would never pick up on it. But when the other person logged in, downloaded the attachment from the draft file, and decoded it, they'd get the message.
That is genius. Man, I came into the Liberty movement a little late and missed all the fun.
All of the crime?
Oh, no, I've definitely done plenty of crime with libertarians. Especially with the war on drugs still existing. I've walked down the streets of Manchester smoking weed with Vermin Supreme. So, you know.
Who hasn't?
Right.
I mean,
I figured I wasn't a real libertarian until I did that. So
right, I've
check
seen
that
Republican state reps do that. Like I have watched Republican state reps smoke weed with Vermin Supreme on Elm Street in Manchester.
That's fantastic. I need to hang out with that guy a little bit more because I've only ever seen him in campaign mode. Where he's meeting a lot of people and kind of in that politician soundbite mode, which I know I slip into pretty often as well. So I need a longer conversation with him.
Yeah, I had the fun time of I brought Kyle Mann, editor in chief of Babylon Bee, to a party in Manchester to
Nice.
meet local libertarians while he was up in New Hampshire. And the moment we walk into the room, like I was, damn it, because I opened the door with Kyle Mann next to me, and then it's immediately the first thing we see is Vermin Supreme doing whippets.
That sounds accurate. That sounds like
Yeah.
the LP New Hampshire.
Yeah, but I was like, damn it, Vermin, we were trying to make a good impression. Never mind, this is your best impression.
Yeah, I mean, at least it was only whippets.
Yeah,
He wasn't cutting lines or anything, so it's an improvement for the
that
LP
time.
that time.
What do you use your lifetime membership card for?
I still need to get one of those. I have I think I'm like one of the only people in my friend group that isn't a lifetime member.
It's an extremely expensive cocaine card.
Right, I just use my extremely expensive insurance card for it currently. That's my go-to. I use my Excellus Blue Cross Blue Shield card because I mean it's the only way that card has actually helped me medicate myself.
So funny story. I ended up in the hospital with an infection last week, and I ended up going to fight with the pharmacist afterwards to pick up my antibiotics. I don't have health insurance, which is really funny for somebody who sells health insurance. Largely because I know enough about the medical system, and I'm involved enough with the medical system. I work with hospital ombudsman enough that I know I don't really need health insurance. Like paying for it's gonna cost me more than I'm gonna get out of it, even when I do have a random hospitalization. I know I can talk that hospital down to $800 for the visit. Cool, that would have been a fraction of my deductible. But I go to the pharmacy and like, I'm here to pick up this prescription. She's like, I got the prescription. I didn't fill it because I couldn't find insurance for you. I'm like, just fill it. I know there's no insurance. Just fill it. She's like, are you sure? It's really expensive. I'm like, no, it's not. It's not expensive. Fill it. And she comes back and she rings it up. She's like, okay, it's like $460. I'm like, no, it's about $20. I'm like, listen, I've worked for Envision, the place that owns your pharmacy. Here is my RxBIN number and my employee ID. And she ran it in, and instead of $472, it was $22. Had I had insurance, the copay would have been $70.
Sounds about right.
But the actual drug costs less than what the insurance copay would have been.
Right, because the insurance has a deal with these pharmacies to make sure that the pharmacies still make all of their money.
Yeah, but it was annoying to me because I'm sitting there like, I'm like, this is an antibiotic that's existed and been on the market for 40 freaking years. How do you get off charging that much for it when I know it's made by 11 different companies?
Right. And I think, that's the main goal of the healthcare industry right now is to fuck up the free market to where you don't think that you have another option. They make, I think, doctors and mechanics do basically the exact same thing. They've made it so expensive to just get looked at that the idea of paying for a second opinion is ludicrous.
Here's the problem. Doctors don't want it to be that way. I can guarantee you. When was the last time you went to see a private practice doctor?
I can't tell you the last time I went to see a doctor.
When was the last time you seen, like driven by a private practice doctor?
It's pretty rare. There are still a couple up here in upstate New York.
Upstate New York there is, and they're not in the Excellus network. They'll only take WellCare.
Yep.
I'll tell you that much. But it's become so expensive to do business as a doctor that most of these doctors are scraping by and cannot cover their overhead based on insurance reimbursements and based on Medicare, because Medicare sets what the usual and customary cost of everything is, and Medicare tells the doctors how much they're allowed to charge for things, and then Medicare only pays 80% of what Medicare says they're allowed to charge for things, and doctors aren't allowed to balance bill patients who don't have secondary insurance, so they end up not even being able to cover the costs, especially when the insurance companies and malpractice insurance and all sorts of other things have gotten the cost of actually performing an MRI, investing in the MRI machine and having it to be to the point where for the first 2 years, you have to charge like $500 an MRI just to break even on that. But Medicare says, no, you can only charge $300. We're only going to pay you $240. So the doctors are eating most of that cost themselves for years on top of paying back their $400,000 in student loans. So we talk about that. A doctor making $120,000 a year has no right to complain. After like paying back the loans and the taxes and the insurance and running the business and paying their staff, that private practice doctor is netting about 32. Like you try living on 32 grand a year in New York.
Right. It's just barely above the poverty line.
Yeah, and the state of New York considers it well below. You can get financial assistance for your medication if you're below 48 in New York. But below 100,000 in New York City,
which is accurate because anything less than 6 figures in New York City is poverty.
Right.
You're eating ramen noodles.
My brother's an air traffic controller making 6 figures plus in New York City. He lives in Brooklyn. And he has to Airbnb out his other bedroom to make rent. Like, I don't get it. I told him, like, listen, if you move to New Hampshire, they'll transfer you to Manchester Airport. You'll make 120 grand instead of 160 grand, but you can buy a goddamn estate.
Right. It's one of my favorite things about traveling this year is I have seen some of the most beautiful houses I've ever seen in my entire life. And then I go home because I used to work in like asset-based lending. So real estate appraisals are a fun hobby for me at this point. And so I'll go and I'll find the documentation on these houses and appraise them myself. And they're like $200,000-$300,000 for like a 12-bedroom, 4-bath house on the lake in Upper Michigan. It's like almost all of the houses that I knocked on this year have been under $500,000.
Yeah.
And mansions.
I went to go look at up in Berlin, New Hampshire, 2-hour drive north of Manchester.
That's way up there.
Yeah, an 8-family complex. It's 8 2-bedrooms with a parking lot, off-street parking for every unit, 32 parking spots, and a basement. And the basement's unfinished, and I could finish it out as another 2-bedroom if I wanted, for $107,000.
Whoa.
And it has existing tenants.
Whoa. That's a great deal.
And each unit's renting for $700 a month.
That's making your money back extremely quickly.
Yeah.
I'm doing that math out.
The problem is it's up in Berlin.
2 years. That's 2 years worth of rent, and you make it back.
Yeah.
Not even. That's a profit after your second year.
The problem is it's in Berlin, New Hampshire. So
the middle of fucking nowhere.
Yeah, if you don't work at the prison or the hospital, you don't work.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So there's a reason there's a federal maximum security prison there. It's because if somebody escapes, there's nowhere to go. It's like, congratulations, you're in the middle of the White Mountains in the middle of winter.
Right. You better have read My Side of the Mountain a couple of times.
And watched Into the Wilds and learned what not to do.
For sure.
There's a lot of property like that up in New Hampshire. If you want to come back to New Hampshire and you have a job where you can work from home, all you need is a stable internet connection. You go up to the North Country, you can get a brand new 3-bedroom, fully remodeled granite kitchen on 4 acres of land for under $40,000.
Yeah. Yeah, I was talking to Sarwark about house prices when I was there, because he was, when I was hanging out with him, he was in that temporary spot over by the church, and he was talking about how house prices have been going up. And I was like, yeah, I mean, it's been going up for a long time. But he was like, it's not like it's been going up in a hurry. He's like, it's been going up for a long time. And I was like, yeah, I mean, it's been going up for a long time. But he was like, it's not like it's been going up in a hurry. He's like, it's been going up for a long time. And I was like, yeah, I mean, it's been going up for a long time. But he was like, it's not like it's been going up in a hurry. He's like, it's been going up for a long time. And I was like, yeah, I mean, it's been going up for a long time. But he was like, it's not like it's been going up in a hurry. He's like, it's been going up for a long time. And I was like, yeah, I mean, it's been going up for a long time. But he was like, it's not like it's been going up in a hurry. He's like, it's been going up for a long time. And I was like, yeah, I mean, it's been going up for a long time. But he was like, it's not like it's been going up in a hurry. He's like, it's been going up for a long time. And I was like, yeah, I mean, it's been going And so we were talking about how cheap that place was and how cheap all the places he was looking at was, and it was blowing my mind because even I think where I'm from is super cheap here in upstate New York. My parents just bought like a rundown, almost condemned house for like I think 12 grand that they're fixing up. And so I'm thinking that's great. That you can easily get like a nice 2-bedroom, like little double wide kind of a house somewhere around here for 20-30 grand easy. And then I went to New Hampshire and figured out that same dollars can buy you like an actually nice place.
Yeah. Unfortunately, you will pay property taxes on it, and they are quite steep.
And not much worse than New York.
Right. Think about that bar, though. Like, not much worse than New York.
Yeah, we're one of the worst.
That's like saying not much farther left than California.
This is true.
Yeah.
When you start comparing governments with other governments, it's not very difficult to make your state look good, especially when you're comparing it to New York or California.
I mean, and then there's the fact that we are the only state in New England without legal weed. Even Canada has legal weed. We are surrounded on all sides. Every border of New Hampshire has legal weed, except New Hampshire.
Right. New York can't quite say that because Pennsylvania is still holding out as well. But we're almost in the same spot. Jersey just legalized it. Connecticut legalized it like a year and a half ago. We border Vermont on the other side. So we're almost an island of prohibition as well. And it's the most ridiculous thing ever. 'Cause at least y'all are a Republican state. Ish. I mean, it's a purple state, but you have a Republican governor. You have like at least somewhat of a logical reasoning for why they're holding out so hard on this. New York should have been one of the first states to go.
I mean, I can just drive to Canada and get mushrooms. The Republicans, I think, actually had a stronger case for legalization than the Democrats ever did. It was the economic tourism.
Mm-hmm.
The Democrats always wanted to talk about, oh, just legalize it, just legalize it. Never really much more than that. It was when the Republicans finally started getting on board with, oh, tax revenue.
Yeah.
That was the final push to start legalizing.
Right. And legalization has passed your legislature, what, twice now or 3 times?
3 times.
3 times. And still nothing.
Still nothing.
But is that the House and the Senate or just the House?
It's passed the House 3 times. The Senate has not passed it once.
Okay. Oh, we need to flip some of those senators.
Oh, but they claim they're Liberty senators.
If you claim to be Liberty and vote against the decriminalization of anything, you're sorely mistaken.
Oh, no. One of them went on a rant and said he could never, ever, ever support legalizing and regulating marijuana because regulation and taxation is bad.
Right. So much worse than throwing people in jail.
Right.
That's why I called out Thomas Massie for voting against the MORE Act. The MORE Act is awful. It's terrible. It contains a whole bunch of stupid bullshit, but not enough stupid bullshit to vote against it, in my opinion.
Massie's just a partisan hack trying to make his way using libertarian clout where he shouldn't have it. Last time I talked to Thomas Massie, I got 4 minutes into trying to invite him to speak at a conference before he asked me to join the Republican Party.
Yikes. Seems like you had a little bit better luck with Amash than Massie.
Surprisingly. I mean, that took a lot of people bothering Amash for a long time. The difference was he would at least talk to all of us.
Right.
I will say it was funny as hell when he endorsed Joe Bishop Henchman for chair of the party and Josh Smith lost his shit on Twitter. He's like, "You've never even talked to me." I'm like, "Are you the only member of the LNC he's never talked to?"
Right.
Like,
Did you even try?
apparently, he like peppered him with DMs on Twitter, and I'm like, really? I text messaged him. like not that hard to get in touch with Justin Amash, if you're not an asshole.
Right. He seems to be like the most down-to-earth politician in existence right now, except for maybe Tulsi Gabbard.
And on some issues, AOC.
It's true.
Yesterday, I swear to God, Nancy Pelosi and Twitter were trying to team up to turn AOC into a fiscal conservative.
It was great, wasn't it?
Like, watching AOC talk about wasteful spending and passing bills without reading them and democratic corruption, I'm like, this is phenomenal. Like,
Yep. She still voted yes, though.
of course she did. She was told to.
Right. But she is not as good of a whip as we think she is, because Rashida Tlaib voted no.
That's actually surprising.
There were 2 Democrats, Tulsi Gabbard and Rashida Tlaib, the
Yeah.
only Democrats to vote no on this bill. And there were only 6 senators total. All of them Republicans, obviously, including libertarian favorites like Rand Paul and Mike Lee.
Yeah. Rand Paul is not his father.
That is a fact. So, I did want to touch on one more thing, because you've been a member of the LP for a significantly longer time than I have. Actually, when did you join, like, officially and start?
Officially, 2016.
Okay. So not much longer than me then. But how do you feel about the current trajectory of the party? Do you think it's moving in a positive way? I've heard a lot of arguments towards like looking at numbers, comparing Johnson's 2016 numbers to Joe Jorgensen this year or something like that, where a lot of people are trying to make the case that we're moving backwards. Plenty of other people made the case that people that left the party this year were a good riddance and were kind of cleaning house and starting from scratch in some ways.
Yes and no.
How do you feel about where the LP is right now?
I feel like Johnson 2016 was a goddamn fluke. To get 2 such equally detestable candidates on either side, where we could honestly say we're not pulling from the left or the right, we're right down the goddamn middle, and America's just pissed. I think Johnson's 2016 results were far more indicative of the fact that the media was looking for another option. Like, there were points in times where like Johnson got regular, recurring media coverage, not because his campaign was well put together. That was a goddamn shit show internally. But because the media was desperate for something else at times. To like, God, not these 2.
Yeah. And you could see that the media was not of the same mind this time around, that they enjoyed pushing this partisan divide and the us against them mentality, regardless of where you were.
It even comes down to alternative media. Like, Joe Rogan admitted that he voted for Joe Jorgensen. Never had her on the show.
Nope. He had Larry Sharp on the show, but didn't have Joe Jorgensen.
And it was a great show.
Yeah.
But it comes down to, like, Joe Rogan's running a business with his show. That's his source of revenue. And I explained to somebody, like, why wouldn't he have Joe Jorgensen on the show? I'm like, because he's not really thrilled about her. He's voting for her because she's another option, but he's not thrilled about her. And if you're running a podcast of that magnitude, your guests are going to be people that you're thrilled about having on, or increase your audience.
Yeah.
And Joe Jorgensen did neither one of those things for him.
Right. Did you watch his the election day stream?
I did not.
Okay, so I actually that's what my TV was on for election night. I was like, I'm not listening to Fox News or CNN tell me what's going on. So it was him, it was Kyle Kalinske, and it was it wasn't Tim Pool. It was somebody else. It was great. Not as good as 2016's stream, because that was significantly better. I don't know if you caught that one. that one's one that I would suggest going back and rewatching if you have 3.5 hours to kill, because he did a stream in 2016 with like a dozen different comedians at the Comedy Store. So it was like live audience. They were just all up on stage, sitting at a table. Bill Burr was sitting over to the right side of the screen with a laptop out open, like calling out the election results, while Joe Rogan and Bert
I can imagine Bill
Kreischer,
Burr calling election.
right, it was great. But you can see the entire like demeanor of the room change when Trump starts to pull ahead, because everybody's kind of in a, like, the name of the episode is the End of the World podcast. Like, it's the whole energy. Almost everyone on stage voted for Johnson or didn't vote. There were a couple of women specifically that voted for Hillary, but even that wasn't all of the women on the stage. So it was very like, fuck it, whoever wins, the world is over anyway. But when it was clear that Trump was going to win, you could tell the LA crowd just started to die inside.
Yeah.
And
Oh
it
my
was
God.
hilarious to watch.
The YouTube compilations of reporters calling it for Trump that night, and you just, every time a reporter on any major network is like, we're calling it for Donald Trump. Like, dying inside. It's like, it's beautiful. It's like, that's raw comedy. It's like, but nobody saw that coming in 2016 except for everybody.
Right.
Like,
I legitimately thought Clinton was going to win. I obviously voted for Johnson. But I waited up until like 1 a.m. that night to see who they were actually going to call. I did the same thing this year. I was up to like 2 or 3 just waiting on something. When I went to sleep, Trump won. When I woke up, Biden had won.
so I'm not gonna lie, it was a tough decision for me this year, living in a swing state where my vote matters disproportionately more than yours does in New York.
Mm-hmm.
As much as I loved Joe, and as well as I've gotten to know her, like, I've taken her out to dinner and let her order lobster on my tab before. I love Joe. But I was real torn in that ballot booth that morning. Like, do I vote for Joe or do I vote for Trump? Because as much as I hate Donald Trump, I ended up voting for Joe. But as much as I hate Donald Trump, he is objectively speaking the best president in my lifetime.
Yeah, which is hard to say, but it's true. I would agree. Because technically Clinton doesn't count for me. I was like 3.
Clinton counts for me. Bush Senior counts for me. But of every president in my lifetime, Donald Trump is the only one who has not started a new war.
That's fair. He tried.
There's some conflicting reports about that. But regardless, it makes him objectively the best president of my lifetime.
If he would have decriminalized marijuana, I would have considered voting for him. I'll be honest, I didn't vote this year because I was in Colorado on election day. And I didn't do my absentee ballot stuff nearly in time.
Not like your vote mattered in New York.
Right. I would have liked to have voted in Colorado to try to vote against. They passed a ballot initiative in Colorado this year that makes all of the people in Colorado's presidential votes completely meaningless from here on out. They voted to give all of their electoral college votes to whoever wins the national popular vote.
Wasn't that only if once enough states to have 270 electoral votes signed on?
Nope. That was the original plan, but because the people in Colorado are just a little too trusting of their government, what actually ended up passing doesn't have that caveat. It's just now that's how it works. Now your vote does not matter if you're voting for the president in Colorado.
Colorado's governor is one of the first Bitcoin millionaires.
This is true. And now he has COVID.
Everyone's got COVID.
Right. I still can't believe that I haven't gotten it yet.
Well, I mean, I got tested 11 times over the summer. Every test came up negative, and I'm sitting there like, I'm running a petition drive in Maine and a petition drive in New Hampshire, and I am out every day talking and shaking hands with no less than 400 people a day. How have I not tested positive?
Right. Yeah, I was out door knocking literally all summer. I took like March through June off. When Tulsi dropped out, I went home and I started working for Yale on the 4th of July or day after 4th of July. And from there till 4 weeks ago, I was out shaking hands with hundreds of people a day and then flying from state to state, doing it in some of the worst cities you could possibly be doing it in. I literally in March when I came home, I flew through the 3 worst cities you could possibly be in the country, because this was early March when cases first started to blow up, and I flew from Salt Lake City through Detroit into New York City and then up to upstate New York. So like, and I was literally sitting on one of those planes with somebody on their way home from China. Swear to God. I'm like, I'm gonna get COVID. Like, I'm screwed. I'm totally screwed. At that time, Salt Lake City had more cases per capita than any other part of the country. They were like the first major hub for whatever reason. I don't understand that. No one goes there. No one leaves there. But yeah, I just got tested for the first time in this whole thing about 2 weeks ago because I flew into New York and they'll arrest you if you don't get tested. Swear to God, I had to fill out a form giving them my address and my phone number and promising to get tested within 4 days. Otherwise, they would come knock on my door with a test. Like literally armed National Guard soldiers waiting for me at the airport when I landed.
To be honest, like I have no problem getting tested, and I would get tested a lot more frequently if it were more available.
Yeah,
because I think information is valuable, and
Yeah.
the more information I have, the more accurately I can, or more like safely, I can plan my own doings. The last week we had an incident in my social group or community where like 3 people tested positive out of the fucking blue. Which, mind you, I'm surprised we made it this far. Because a lot of libertarians have been doing things like refusing to wear masks,
Right.
refusing to social distance, going to bars that are closed and blacking out the windows and still having parties every night. I'm surprised we made it this far without anybody getting sick. But I went to, and between that and me being in the hospital on Sunday, I'm like, I should probably get tested. Then I realized, I'm like, they didn't test me at the hospital.
Yeah, that's kind of weird.
Yeah, they just asked me a bunch of questions and then treated me and let me go. I'm like, all right. But they did not test me. So I went to go try and get a test. And they're like, are you asymptomatic? I'm like, no, sorry, can't do it. There's such a backlog on tests now that I wouldn't be able to get a test without driving 2.5 hours away.
That's ridiculous.
And I'm like, well, okay, then I'm going to assume I don't have it. Like,
right. Yeah, and the last thing that I want to do is be a symptomless carrier. I mean, I'm 23 years old. I don't eat very well, but I smoke, but I'm a fairly healthy individual. Of the friends of mine that have tested positive, most of them didn't have very many symptoms if the ones that live a similar life to me. So I could have easily have had it and not known about it for months.
Right, that's the thing. Is like everyone I know that got tested, that tested positive, they got tested because they were exposed to someone who was sick, who had symptoms. None of them got sick. It's been 2 weeks at this point. None of them have shown a single symptom, even though they tested positive.
Mm-hmm. I think that's the scariest part of COVID for me, was when they started talking about the symptomless carriers and the fact that you could be killing the people around you without having a clue about it. I think a mixture between that and the transmission rate is what makes this so much worse than the flu. Everyone's, it's not as deadly as the flu, right? But it's 10 times as easy to transfer from person to person, and you're significantly more likely to have it without knowing it. So it's worse than the flu. People that are trying to make it sound like it's not, I think, are living in kind of a delusional.
Yes and no. So I've been put in a weird spot by COVID, politically and professionally, because my actual academic background is in emergency management and homeland security, and I studied human virology and epidemiology.
Oh, nice.
Never did anything with it because I found out real quick after graduating that I really hated working for FEMA. But that was real quick. I found that out. This is just a bad flu. That's really all it is. The problem is most Americans are ignorant about how compromised our healthcare system is every winter from the normal flu, and how close to being overwhelmed we are with the normal flu every flu season. So that when we say this is just a bad flu that overwhelms the hospital system isn't 200,000 dead in flu season. It's 2 million. It can happen. It's like out of the blue. There's not a far stretch from the hospital system being able to handle it and mitigate deaths to under 100,000 in a flu season to the hospital system not being able to mitigate it, and that like 10% extra patients means 40% extra mortalities. Just the way our infrastructure is designed.
Right. And that is fixing that problem is a whole bunch of different things that, it's not just wearing a mask and washing your hands. We need a more robust health system in America, just in general.
Unfortunately, ain't nobody gonna do that.
Right.
Edward Kaiser and Ted Kennedy already fucked up that for everybody.
Yeah, it's not gonna get much better until we start attacking the actual root problems, like the fact that nurses can't do anything without a doctor signing off on it.
You mean the HMO Act of 1973?
Yes. I think Dan Fishman, has labeled out the issues in the healthcare industry better than most people that I hear talk about it. I think he's one of the best people I've ever talked to about accurately and legitimately blaming government for every problem in America. He has his talking points down very well.
Well, I mean, I think Dan was in a unique position to develop his views on healthcare when he was spent so much time sitting between me and Peter Everett arguing over healthcare, where me coming from the insurance and the epidemiological side of things, and Peter, who's an oncologist at one of the top medical universities in Boston, lecturing Dan for years about what we thought was wrong with healthcare in Massachusetts.
Right. And he worked in hospital administration too, right?
He did hospital administration and IT and tech too. So it was getting me from the insurance perspective, and then Peter from as a doctor's perspective, and Dan from an administrator's perspective. Like between the three of us, it was like it all boils down to fuck Ted Kennedy. Like if you could have time travel, you could kill one person. It wouldn't be Hitler, it'd be Ted Kennedy.
Yeah, they shot the wrong Kennedy.
Yeah,
they shot two of them. They missed the one that actually caused the problems.
Yeah, but if Ted Kennedy and Edward Kaiser and Richard Nixon were not all friends, we wouldn't have HMOs destroying health in America.
Right. It is amazing how few people understand what happened in American history to make these things as fucked up as they are. The other main one is college. if you actually follow the timeline of when college prices started to skyrocket, there's a very clear thing that happened. And you can go back and you can Google this. You can fact check this. Anybody watching?
Student loans became a thing.
Student loans became a thing. Then the government said you can't go bankrupt on your student loans. And then the banks and the colleges got together and were like, hey, we're making money hand over fist here. Colleges told the banks you need to start letting more people take out loans, and banks told the colleges you need to start accepting more people so that we can all make more money. And you need to jack up your prices so that we can make more money. And the colleges were like, shit, you're right. We can jack up our prices and we're guaranteed to get this money because the federal government made it so. So why not charge $500,000 for a PhD? And now we have $500,000 PhDs, and it's ridiculous.
Yeah, boomers often overlook what inflation of cost has done to succeeding generations when they say, I worked my way through college, pay off your damn loans. I'm like, bitch, you worked your way through college part-time at a fast food joint.
Right.
Like
right. As we mentioned earlier, we have doctors struggling to pay off their student loans.
Yeah.
That was not a thing in the boomer generation or even really Gen X.
Right. I believe millennials are the first generation that will be institutionally worse off than the generation before them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's only going to keep getting worse.
Yeah. Yeah, Gen Z is going to be fucked even more. Yeah. Luckily, I came just before the cutoff, and I call myself a millennial. Gen Z is something else. But yeah, it's staggering when you actually start to compare the numbers of what an hour's worth of work can get you now compared to 20 years ago. It's just not the same world. And to try to compare, oh, well, I did this or I did that and I turned out fine.
Right.
First of all, I'll say if you lived a hard life and were successful and you make the argument that I did all that and I turned out fine, you should have to go through it too. You did not, in fact, turn out fine. You turned out a shit person. Like, you did not turn out fine. So maybe we should take a look at that and figure out what we could give the next generation to make sure they don't turn out to be pieces of shit that see all of their hardships in life as a challenge that the next generation must also overcome.
It's the NIMBY attitude. If I had to do it, you have to do it, but don't do it in my backyard.
Right.
And I even run into that issue with like dyed-in-the-wool libertarians who are at their core just NIMBYs. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, the government shouldn't be punishing homeless people. You shouldn't, but evict them if they're in my park.
Right.
Like my property values are suffering because the government is making them suffer. So the government needs to do something about it so my property values recover.
Right. I talk a lot on the show, especially lately, about libertarian philosophy compared to libertarian politics. And I make the argument that like a solid 70 to 80% of the LP only is libertarian in politics. Because libertarian philosophy is, you can be as conservative or liberal as you want as long as you're not forcing your ideals or way of life on other people.
Right.
So when you have presidential candidates or even down ballot candidates campaigning on, day one, I'm going to end the war on drugs. It's the same thing as Biden campaigning on day one, I'm going to cancel all student loans. It's still executive overreach. It's still pushing your views on other people in a way that's not how the Constitution was written. So I think what you're talking about falls right in line with that. This whole NIMBY mindset of the individual is only important when the individual is me.
Right. As long as me and mine get ours, the rest can get fucked.
Right. Where true libertarianism is all your rights, all the time fighting for the biggest minority, which is the individual,
Right.
and all individuals. It's not about your individual freedoms. It's about individual freedom, period.
Like, hard stop. Like, that's the tweet. Send it.
So I wish more people would kind of adopt this libertarian philosophy. And the other thing that I believe wholeheartedly is that libertarian philosophy is present more rampant in other parties than it is within the LP in a lot of ways. You know, you have candidates like Tulsi Gabbard, who's part of the duopoly. You know, we've seen her be a puppet a couple of times. But she at least embodies this idea of my job as commander in chief is not to push my ideals on other people.
Right.
So I argue that Tulsi ran a million times better or more libertarian of a campaign than Joe Jorgensen did.
Policy-wise, there were some things that Tulsi really started to stray. Tulsi lost New Hampshire because of her guns.
See, I hear that so often, but by the time the New Hampshire primary came around, Tulsi's gun policy had been radically changed for over a month and a half.
Didn't matter.
And I know.
Because NHPR and the billboards didn't change.
Right. Yeah, I got to partake in a couple of conversations with her and people in the upper echelon of her campaign, and you know, I've mentioned him a couple of times tonight, and I think Reed Coverdale actually handed her, like, in a manila envelope, like a letter. It was like 9 pages or something like that, detailing why her gun policy is wrong and why she doesn't even believe her gun policy based off of her voting record and her rhetoric from previous campaigns. And she listened. You know, it took her a little while to get her to actually read it because she was a busy woman. But she read it and she changed her gun policy.
It's
and
crazy.
I know it was too little too late for a lot of the more right-wing libertarians, unfortunately.
Even Democrats in New Hampshire, the Democratic primary, people don't realize that the constitutional carry passed in New Hampshire with 40% of the Democrats voting for it in the House. Like, New Hampshire Democrats are weird, okay? like your typical hard right Republican in New York or Massachusetts would be our average Democrat in New Hampshire. Like, these people, like, they want government health care, they want unemployment, they want security, but don't you dare fucking touch their guns. It's a weird mentality.
Like a New York Republican.
But
expand government, just don't touch my guns.
Yeah, it's weird because, like, I could see the difference in the crowds at Tulsi's events that I went to just, like, to observe, and, like, me and Nick went to some. My friend Andre had a hardcore crush on some kid who kept showing up, so he kept coming to the Tulsi Gabbard events because he wanted to find that little gay kid that was running around.
Ooh, I'll have to figure after we stop recording. I'll have to figure out who that was.
But there was a noticeable difference in the crowd that showed up to her rallies before and after the gun control ad ran.
Mm-hmm.
And it went from she's different, like, a whole bunch of independents, libertarians, and, like, center-leaning Democrats, like, yeah, like, I thought Tulsi was gonna win New Hampshire, and then Tulsi read a gun control ad. It's like, nope.
Yeah, that was probably the worst thing she did.
Yeah,
in her entire campaign.
Yeah,
that was her Aleppo moment.
Right, but I'm sitting there, like, even George Carpenter is like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I definitely wish that Reed and I could have got to her before she ran that ad. We would have been a lot better off. I also had very high hopes of her vote totals in New Hampshire. I didn't think she was gonna win. I was projecting like third or fourth, in like somewhere in the, like, the middle to high double digits of percent.
So
And
one day I went to both her rally and Pete Buttigieg's rally the same day. They were going on simultaneously. I walked from the park to the Murphys back and forth
nice.
because, to be fair, I was not a fan of the vegan buffet that Tulsi provided. I was more a fan of the pizza that Pete provided.
Yeah, I tried to convince people that was a bad idea. I legitimately did.
Murphy's has such a good menu, and y'all pick like the 4 worst things on the menu.
Seriously, Murphy's is a libertarian tap room. Like their best meal is their burgers and their steaks, and
yeah, but Tulsi had tap room packed every square inch. There was not a space to sit. It was overflowing into the street out of the door of both the downstairs door and the upstairs door. I walk across the street to the park where Pete is meeting with people one-on-one because there were 7 people there.
damn.
And Pete won New Hampshire.
Right. I never got to make it to one of his events. I almost went to one because I was out door knocking out east somewhere, and he was holding an event at actually no, it was out west. It was in Lebanon, and he was holding an event at a high school that I was this close to stopping and going in just for the off chance of shaking his hand, just because I thought he was gonna I thought he was gonna win for a time. I was like, these
honestly, he would have been
establishment
better than Biden.
He would have been a better puppet than Biden.
Honestly, there was not many people in the primary who would have been worse than Biden, except for Harris and Warren.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, we still got Harris.
Right? Yeah, Pete Buttigieg. What I have always found interesting about him was that when he announced his candidacy, he was a good candidate. Ish. I mean,
he tried to be the
not
white
by
gay
libertarian
Obama.
morals, right? But he was progressive. He was end the wars. He was Medicare for all. He was a little Bernie at the beginning, and then you can watch his Twitter feed and his FEC timeline perfectly, because as soon as he starts getting millions of dollars, his rhetoric changed within a day of his campaign dollars skyrocketing. All of a sudden, Medicare for all might not be the best idea. Maybe ending the wars isn't what we need to be doing. Maybe these millions of dollars that I got paid from the health and military industrial complexes are going to change my mind on a couple of things. And he became just another establishment puppet. They effectively bought out probably arguably the best progressive candidate that the far left had in the beginning, and they bought him right out before he could gain any traction as a progressive.
Yeah, the question is, was he ever? And I will say this: for all of his events that I did go, he was the most boring candidate.
Really?
He had a canned
dance
speech.
didn't help. You didn't have high hopes, you know?
No, he was just like his actual speech was like very towards the end there. Tulsi's got pretty canned too, but Pete's was the exact same canned speech the entire time,
Mhm.
and it just never felt genuine.
Yeah. Yeah, towards the end of Tulsi's campaign, so all of January I was working in an office, so I wasn't actually going to her events,
Yeah.
but like towards the end of me going to every event of hers, because there was about a month and a half stretch where I was running like the sign-in table and the merch table, and so I was there for every single event. I would go take a nap in her green room while she was speaking regularly, because I've heard it before. Like,
I will say
one of
the Murphys, one of the Murphys events, one of the later ones, when she told AJ to go fuck himself. Not in those words, but it was beautiful because AJ Olding had made a habit of trying to go to as many different presidential events as he could, and every time he would ask every candidate if they would pardon Ross Ulbricht. That was his only question. He asked it for months to every single candidate, he asked it of Tulsi at her first New Hampshire event up in Concord at the little coffee shop before she even declared. She was just visiting New Hampshire. And she's like, oh, I'll look into it. I've never heard of him, blah, 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 blah. And then like 3 times later, he's asked her at different events. And then like her last event, he's asking her in Manchester. She's like, listen, I'm running a campaign. I don't have time for this. I remember you. You keep bothering me with this.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
When Tulsi goes off book, it's one of the greatest things.
Yeah.
I remember we did another event in Manchester. I don't remember. Were you at the one we did at the Rex Theater where she like phoned in?
Yeah, me and Nick went to that one.
Right. I remembered Nick was there. I couldn't remember if it was you or AJ that was with him. But she said she was handing out those lays to everybody, and she told our assistant state coordinator to lay his wife for her. And I don't even think she knew what she said, but the entire crowd just died, and Dan's face was fucking redder than my logo. It was perfect.
No, that event wasn't what I expected it to be, but like I got invited, so I'm like, I guess I'll come. Like
that event was a huge letdown, like as a staffer, because we put a lot of work into that event. That was probably, other than that last Murphy's event that you were mentioning, which I didn't even go to. I was in the office around the corner. That the Rex Theater event we put more work into than literally any other event. We hired an opening act for music. We did a lot of work, and the fucking Nancy Pelosi fucked it all up for us because Chelsea had to stay in DC for that extra night to vote on. I think it was the NDAA. It was the impeachment and then something else. Were both in the same day that ended up taking too long. And she couldn't make it, and it was just not the same with her on the screen like that. It was super awkward. The room started to empty out about 45 minutes in. By the time she was done talking, the room only had like a quarter of the people in it. It was just not a good event. But it could have been such an amazing event. So that's like one of my biggest letdowns of the campaign, in my opinion.
It was an odd night. I didn't know what really to expect when I sat down. Like, this is not what I'm like, Nick, why did we get invited to a staff rally?
Right. Handing out all the lays and stuff like that in the beginning, and I was like, no one cares about this. We can do this afterwards or something like that. If she had been there, it would have been awesome and like a great interaction, and getting to see her interact with her staff would have been a big selling point, I think, for a lot of people, because that's what sold me on her, was seeing how she interacted with the people that work for her and the way that she treated me as like a semi-nobody. When I got there, I was just like a regular person, just knocking doors and volunteering. She remembered my name from the first time she met me, and then, sang me happy birthday on my birthday. Just a great person that treated everyone on her staff with the same level of respect, whether it was her deputy campaign manager or just a random person that showed up to one event to help work the sign-in table. So seeing that would have been a great selling point, but seeing it through a screen like that was not.
Yeah, I just got confused as to what it was. I'm like, I saw the ad on the website for this event, and like, Nick, I only came because we got invited.
Who
Nick,
invited you guys?
I don't even remember.
Because I know it wasn't me. I invited Nick to the Manchester event previous to that, which he did not come to, because I think it was the same day as an LP meeting or something like that. And then he showed up to that one and got super pissed at me for telling Tulsi that he was there, because she shouted him out. Yeah, and he came up to me afterwards. He's like, "So, do I have you to thank for that bullshit?"
Yeah, he's that he was not happy with that. I remember because
I did not mean for that to make it to Tulsi. I told the MC of the event, Vince, about it. So
Vince, that's who it was. Vince invited me and Nick because I had been talking to Vince about doing another event at Murphy's with Free Staters.
that would have been great. Vince is a fantastic human who I think he made the biggest personal sacrifices for Tulsi's campaign out of anybody else that I met. This guy had a full-time job at a lab. He was the director of research and development for a small like chemical company that made cleaning products and stuff like that. He has a master's in chemistry and like had his life put together and almost lost his job because of how many days he took off to help the campaign and then ended up just quitting it instead. Like his boss basically gave him an ultimatum of like, okay, you're either working for us or you're working for Tulsi. Like it's starting to get to be a problem. And he was like, okay, I'm working for Tulsi. Quit his job. His lease ran out and he didn't renew it. Started living with us in like the campaign housing, and just ended up in Hawaii for the last 6 months. He just got back to New Hampshire like this week. Just completely gave up his entire life, which was super put together and adultish. I gave up my life for Tulsi, but I wasn't doing anything. I was running for city council when I met her. I had already quit my job and gave up the lease on my apartment and was a nomad, doing nothing with my life, or not doing nothing, but nothing adultish.
So give up my life? You mean the debt and the couch?
Right. Yeah, when I started working for Tulsi Gabbard, I would couch surfing around New York City. So when they were like, "Hey, you want to move to New Hampshire?" I was like, "Sure." All right. Give me a week. Let me finish up my campaign, and I'm there.
Yeah. Like fuck it, got nothing better to do.
Right. Oh man. Well, we're coming up on 2 hours now. So if people, thank you if you're still watching. For joining us. Thank you, Justin, for coming on. You want to give people like your social media stuff so people can find you and follow you and stay connected and hear all your hot takes?
Easiest way is watching me piss people off on Twitter. Over at O'Donnell #4NH on Twitter. Late today and yesterday, I've just been fighting with AOC. It's fun. She keeps trying to send the communists to dox me. But usually there, Facebook, I'm not really all that active anymore. But if you want to head over to Twitter, follow me on Twitter. It's super fun. You can join in on the fight, and we got killer memes.
Killer memes. Liberty memes are the best. Yeah. Yeah. So I highly encourage all of you go follow him on Twitter. Great hot takes and debates with random commies.
Check mark help.
that I've been talking to people that we all need to run for Congress in 22. Like everybody. I don't care how legitimate of a candidate you are. Find a congressional race that you can declare yourself in as a libertarian candidate, so you can get a blue check. So the entire liberty movement has blue checks.
I feel like the blue checks have been diluted in value. I had mine from before.
Oh.
Like I got my blue check. I got my blue check when I published my book. And now it's like half my friends have blue check marks. It's like, yeah, I got blue check marks. I'm like, it doesn't mean anything anymore.
Right. Wait, you published a book? I can't. Yeah. Can't let that one go by. What's your book?
Oh, it's called Selling Liberty: How to Communicate Freedom in an Unfree World.
Okay.
So it's
I'm gonna
basic sales tactics and trainings, and how you can incorporate the basic communication skills that most non-autistic people have into communicating your political views as a libertarian.
Too bad the LP is full of autismos.
Yeah. So, but yeah, no, it's available on Amazon.
All right. I am gonna have to go give that a quick look at.
If you Google me, Justin O'Donnell, it's one of the first things that comes up, actually.
All right. Well, again, thank you guys all for tuning in to another episode of the Fight for Liberty show. If you want to see my stupid hot takes, at Fight for Liberty or at David Fight on Twitter. Just don't pay attention to my Twitter feed after like midnight because it gets weird. But we will catch you again next time. And until then, keep up the fight.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. Don't forget to click the like and subscribe buttons below. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Fight for Liberty, and support the channel at patreon.com/fightforliberty. And as always, keep up the fight.